Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Snack Chats 2. I'm Natalie Jayne Clark, one of the writers here at Snack, and today with me I have Jack Hinks. Jack Hinks is a Scotland-based singer-songwriter and producer, known across the UK for his introspective songwriting, guitar playing, and cross-media experimentation. Jack is a staple name across many genres and scenes. He returns with his debut concept album, Kintsugi, and the An and a H always and homage to the Kübler-Ross Stages of Grief, which released on September the 12th of this year. Comprised of five previously heard songs, re-recorded and remastered with brand new interlude tracks, Kintsugi is a cyclical listening experience. The album can be started at any point and allows for a seamless repeating cycle, symbolizing the nature of grief and healing. Thank you for coming along today, Jack. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, just been, working and writing. I came off a book tour kind of recently, and it's my first time touring.
Oh,
Um,
amazing. Congrats.
yeah, and it's just getting used to looking after yourself and things like that. So you're in the
hmm
middle of a tour and you've been to Canada, is that right? You're back from Canada. Tell us a little bit
That
about
is
your
correct.
your touring.
I am. Yeah, I started the tour in Edinburgh with the album launch early September and then immediately went off to Canada the next day. Did 5 dates there, came back. I've done about another maybe 3 or 4 dates since then across Scotland and one in England last week. And it's starting to wrap up a little bit now. I was hoping to like maybe get 1 or 2 extra dates to send the year out. I've got a couple in the new year, but I'm not sure when do you end a tour? When is
Mhm.
I guess the final date, and when are you just continuing to gig for the rest of your
Yeah.
life?
Yeah. Yeah. And what point is it to do with the album? What part is it you? And obviously there'll be a point where you're, doing new material and things like that.
hmm
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And the first question I had wasn't about the album. It was I was doing a little bit of research, and it said that you use an Angel of Rock distortion pedal. And I was actually wondering, I've been friends with guitarists, and the pedal setup is quite important, so I was wondering if you could
Mm.
tell us a little bit about like using pedals live, what are they like as a performer having pedals, and do you have a favorite?
So I tend not to use pedals when I'm doing the acoustic setup, but I've definitely gone deep into the like pedal hole that most guitarists do. It's a very like cyclical like or like a bell curve where you start off with like I don't really need anything, and then you go I need everything. I need to invest heavily in all of the shiny objects and boxes, and then sometimes you go over the other end and go, actually, I just need a simple setup. It's fine. I don't need to go crazy. But somewhere in that like final third or quarter is like the sweet spot, I think. Pedals can really change the overall sound, and I think for me, it's not just how it sounds; it's being able to play off of that sound and how it can not only affect the performance but effect the performance. And every aspect of performance can lead back into itself. So there was a single that I put out, oh man, 7 years ago now, called Fabric, which is set to like the main sound of the track is like a very like warm like delay pedal, and that needs to be set in time with the drums because if it's not, it will be entirely out. So like it can end up being a really core part of the songs and as a writing tool as well, I guess. If you play around with things in the writing stage, it can bring out a lot of ideas, or it can just add a little bit of shine to an idea you already had. So I'd
Yeah, so it's
encourage
something to
mucking around if you haven't already.
Yeah, so it's sort of supporting like the experimentation of it.
hmm
Yeah, interesting. So I've seen them used live, and I wasn't sure if you would use them when you're recording as well, or if
hmm
or would you just layer up your own sounds?
I think I would definitely use them more in recording than live, I guess. It depends entirely on the gig and whether I'm playing with like other musicians as well. But um, sometimes the sounds that you want come from pedals, and sometimes you can build them in other ways in a studio. But live, I guess, pedals give you what you need in a more reliable fashion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So onto your album, Kintsugi. So the Kintsugi is the putting together of broken pieces of vase and sealing them together with gold, sort of to highlight the beauty of imperfection, that
Hmm.
sort of philosophical, aesthetic Japanese concept of wabi-sabi, which is something I've been really fascinated with for a long time.
Mm.
Um, and then, your album is about, grief and healing. So I was wondering why to you that Kintsugi wabi-sabi goes together with that kind of theme so well. Why did you choose that as your album?
I think it can be a really beautiful metaphor for, I guess, pain or healing and grief, because everyone has experienced discomfort or loss or pain, and yet we are all, well, most of us are still here. At some point we won't be, but whilst we are, I think it's important to, I guess, acknowledge that that's part of your journey rather than looking for a completely like perfect.
Oh, your sound's just cut out.
Oh,
Oh, you're back,
fantastic.
you're back.
Hey, is it all right?
Yeah, it sounds fine now. Yeah,
Hey, sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened.
that's okay.
But yeah, I think Kintsugi is a really interesting metaphor for grief and just continuing in light of um, regret or loss and things that you would have otherwise changed, but that is part of life. There are some things you can't control, and it gives. I like the idea that you're unable to change some things about yourself, and that's sometimes a good thing. And you should honor that rather than put everything through like a critical lens.
Yeah, rather than fighting it and like say critical lens, like looking through it negatively, those broken bits are there now and we've put
Hmm.
them together, but they are there and there's accepting them.
Yeah, and
Um,
much like pedals, it can influence what you do
yes.
in
Yeah.
in the future, and that can be a lesson, not necessarily like a mark of shame. It can be, oh, cool, I'll do better next time, or I'll
Yeah.
feel better next time, or I'll handle it differently.
Yeah. Gives you a new perspective, a new way through. Yeah,
Hmm.
and I was chatting to Ali Braidwood the other day, who
Hmm.
interviewed you for Scott's Way Hey. And as people that review music and things like that, we get through a lot of press releases, but
Hmm.
less often listening notes, which you
Hmm.
have for this album, which we really both appreciated. And I was just,
Amazing.
well, we had a few questions, so I'm going to ask you them. So really, we were wondering if it's going to be printed, if it is available as a printed, object in itself as a book, these listening notes. And, what was your process? What was the process of writing it? Why did you write it? Did you enjoy it? And things like, each of your songs you assign a color and
Hmm.
you have different keys that they're in. So we were just interested in that side of it because we're fascinated with that behind the scenes of it all.
Me too. I think that's kind of why I wrote it. I Because when you're listening to someone else's work, you have your own interpretations of it, and I think that's one of the most like beautiful continuing parts of art, right? Is that you can play a song or paint a picture or write a paragraph, and to you it means something very intentional or very specific, maybe even to your life if it's more autobiographical. But someone else might read it and go, "Ooh, that sounds like X or Y or whatever it is that they've experienced." And I guess I wanted to, because this was like the first album and a big project that took me a long time, I wanted to get my thoughts down on it while they were still fresh. And I guess even if it didn't necessarily appeal to other people, to draw a line in the sand for me and go, here's where I was emotionally or mentally or like artistically when I wrote this, and here's what it means to me. And if that deepens the experience of listening for someone else, then great. But if it doesn't, then I guess you don't need to abide by it as a hard and fast rule of this song can only mean this. Like a lot of a lot of what I wanted to achieve with this album was like interpretability and have people challenge my interpretations. And the order of it is meant to, for me, represent um starting at stage one, or like denial in the stages of grief in the Kübler-Ross's stages, and then go all the way to acceptance. But if someone else put it in shuffle and said, no, actually, I experience grief in a different way, I would do it in this order. Great. That's the whole point. But to your point, will it be in print? Yes. Here's one right
Ah,
here. For the audio listeners and people listening without video, I'm holding up a printed version of the listening guide. But yeah, it's been printed. It's a nice little
wow.
I think about a 26-page booklet with lyrics, the processes of how I wrote the tracks, and what they mean to me. And as you mentioned, I've got the key and the associated color with each track. I associate, at least with my own songs, different tracks with different colors and sort of overall aesthetics. That is quite often linked to the key that they're in. For me, I have a lot of association. There's a term called synesthesia, which is, I guess, seeing sounds with color or hearing color, and that sort of cross-media approach to art and interpreting art, which I identify with, but it's one of these self-diagnosed things which I imagine is different for everyone. So I don't want to say I have hard and fast synesthesia because it's probably different for everyone, and maybe it's like an aesthetic association rather than purely like I hear a G and of course it's light green, like nothing like that. But yeah, so there's a lot behind it. I'm going off track. Sorry.
No, no,
There's a lot
tangents
behind
are
it, but
always
I enjoyed
welcome.
writing it.
Yeah, yeah. I can imagine that being a fun element of the process. And did you change any of the music after writing the listening guide, or was the listening guide purely written once the album was finished? Or, was it finalized once you'd finished the album?
I finished the album and then I wrote the guide.
Yeah.
Had I that would be a really interesting experiment for the next one though, like to be writing alongside and see if that influences the tracks themselves. But for this time it was purely like a not to make it too like school or academic like, but it was a report after the fact, I guess, showing my work as it were.
Showing your workings out. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I mean that the listening guide has artwork and things like that as well, and collaboration there.
Mhm.
But also a lot of the songs have a kind of collaboration. And one of my favorite is The Emperor, which has a flugelhorn on it, or something.
Correct.
Yes. So I wonder if you tell me a little bit more about collaboration with you
Mhm.
in general and this album in particular.
So this album, I think, tying into how I like why I wanted to really get my thoughts down on the process with it. I think most of this album was written pretty much on an acoustic guitar, and it had like a very personal beginning from each of it, and then it sort of grew out into its final form through collaboration. All of the main tracks, like each track that represents one of the stages of grief, as at least as I see it, um, started as a song that I could play live just on my own. But then I work a lot with Fiona Littlethorne, who has played violin and added vocals to a lot of my work for years now, and expanded into like a full band setup with Dave Hill, Neil Ray, and Ben Lobban. But then also with the Emperor, as you mentioned, I was looking for flugelhorn and a trumpet, and I found someone purely just online, Jojo Biel. There's a Hungarian brass player who basically agreed to do a remote session for me, and then I sent through what I thought I wanted, and he recorded that, and then also recorded some other like improvised lilts over the top, and they were just great. So it's like, yeah, thank you, I'll put that right in. It's it's been a really nice balance of I'm gonna write something that is for me with intention, and then I'll sort of like hand it out to other players and they'll go, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna add a little bit here and there," and it's beyond what I could have imagined, or because I'm not, a brass player, they do something that sounds great, and I go, "I hadn't even considered that, I might need flugelhorn," until he said, "Oh, I just threw some flugelhorn on there." And I go, "Great, done. Now that's made the track."
Just a great word to say as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like a beautiful way to collaborate as well, where it's
Mm,
just heightening what you already have. Yeah, here's the soup, here's the sauce.
hmm
What do you think, what do you think will just elevate it a little more? The My last question is about loud poets because that's
mm,
how I first got to know of you and your work.
hmm
Um, and essentially what you do is you kind of accompany spoken word artists. A lot of the time it's improvised. So in the moment, a poet will give you three words. They might say like bicycle, jaunty, and dog, and you have to just interpret that
hmm
and try and move along with them on stage. Sometimes they're competing as well, so
hmm
and I was just wondering what's that like, and how is that experience for you?
I think over time it's gotten to be a really freeing thing, because I think the more a piece is rehearsed and intended to be the same each time, you can rely on practicing it and aiming to get it exactly the same each time, and that in itself has its own structure and reliability. But doing something entirely improvised in the moment, I start to find that more comfortable in a way, because there's not enough time to think, and you're just purely reacting. And I think that over time has definitely affected how I write and the sort of things that I would play normally within the scope of like genres that I would write in. It's been really fun to kind of remove that self-criticism that is usually there from the start. Like if I sit down and try to like write a song, there will be I'm not sure, maybe this bit doesn't sound good, or that bit sounded too trite. You need to change it. Like all of these like steps that would, I guess, um, block or like stop me from continuing on aren't nearly as present in a situation like that, where I can't stop and do it again because we're already a minute into a live performance. So you commit and you go through. And I think that's made me a more confident musician, and I guess forced me to stand by my work, whether I would later change it or do it differently another time. You have to stand by it in the moment. And I think with this album, the main five tracks that are songs were written a while back and like took a long time to get into their final forms. But the linking tracks in between, there's like short instrumental like interludes that um, connect each track so that there isn't any silence in the album. It just goes round completely. Those I think were a lot easier to write after having done my improvising work with the poets, because it's like, oh, I need to get from A to B. Well, now I'm used to working to like a brief or with like a mission in mind rather than, ooh, maybe I'll like write something and see where it goes. It's like I know I need to start here and it needs to end here and it needs to give this general feeling. And I think it's definitely like deepened the process of writing from an improvisational beginning, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. And a phrase I use a lot is like, constraints breeds creativity. I
Mm,
like a narrower. And you even use the phrase like you tasked yourself with writing
hmm
this album with grief, which I think is interesting. As an idea, like giving yourself like, a goal, something to tick off. And I was thinking there when you were talking about sounds similar with writing, there's sort of like the little goblin gremlin sitting on your shoulder,
hmm
as you're writing, and you just need to somehow, blot it out. So otherwise you'll never get anything written. So it sounds to you like that improvisation, you just gotta write.
hmm
And I was wondering as you were talking there, has anything that you've ever improvised in one of these events, poetry events, ever been reused later? You've like done something in the moment and then been like, oh, I like that, and then
hmm
kind of try to remember it and write it down later to play with again. Has that something like that ever happened?
Yeah, I think one of the parts of these interlude tracks even came out of um, a prompt. It was I was working on a solo spoken word show some years ago, and I needed to come up with a piece of music that felt quite like unsettling, but
Mm.
needed to, I guess, keep moving forward. It couldn't just stay static because then that's silence and that's not accompaniment all the time, at least. Um, and that ended up being one of the main riffs in one of my favorite parts of the album. There's a linking track between the Emperor and the final track, Jigsaw, which was born out of one of those. I need to think on my feet and write something. Oh, I really like that. I'll keep it somewhere. And yeah, like these things definitely do sort of crop up, and I think forcing myself to improvise is in a way trying to tap into like what is my unedited voice or creative vision, I guess. Like as you say, if you can find a way to silence the gremlin on your shoulder, what would you write if you weren't holding back, or if you weren't like, I guess, trying to think your way out of thinking.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, I think a lot of it to me is like expectations as well. What do ex people expect, or what do people
Hmm.
want? And it's just you just gotta barrel forwards. So super interesting conversation, Jack. And I think this album as well feels like a real like culmination of a lot of things because you work across, mediums and places and projects and things like that. And you've really thought about everything. And the list, like I said, the listening, guide really adds this extra appreciation, I think, for all the things you think about, everything that goes behind a track or an album.
Hmm.
So thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for your time today. So people can get your album now, and tell us a bit more about where they can find you.
So you can find me. Jack Hinks is a fairly uncommon name. So you can find me wherever you're streaming music, wherever you're following artists or on social media, different channels. It's usually at Jack Hinks Music, or my website is jackhinks.co.uk. You will find me out and about, often gigging behind poets, or sometimes just myself, mostly in Scotland. And yeah, I'm about, so feel free to look me up and find me somewhere or follow me home.
And yeah, enjoy the last couple of dates of your tour as well. So thank you again for your time and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, you too.
Thank you.